Everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tanya Talks. I'm your host, Tanya Ricketts, and today I'm joined with another Tanya, Tanya Smith. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Hello. So thank you for tuning in. I just want to welcome Tanya to Tanya Talks and Tanya Smith to Tanya Talks. So I just want to just share a little bit about Tanya. And Tanya she's got 20 years plus years in the corporate world. She's got a lot of experience in the finance world. She is an NLP coach and a personal development expert and an all-round problem solver. I can attest to that. She works with professionals and entrepreneurs to reconnect them to their true self, that they can step into their true power. And tonight we have Tanya with us that is going to talk about how to take care of your energy and how to guard your energy. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tanya, my sister from another mother.
So let's get started, because I feel like this is a topic like many other topics that can spill over into 5,000 different topics. So
absolutely.
Share with the audience this evening what that means when somebody is talking about guarding their energy.
So when I hear about people talking about guarding their energy means so many different things to people. So I'm going to, explain to people what it means for me. So when I talk about energy, it's my personal power, but my personal space and the energy that I use and that I have around me that affects my personal space and my personal being. So when you talk about energy, it's a funny thing because people equate it to many different things. Like they say money's energy, they say, attitude is energy. But for me, it's how do I want to feel when people come into my space? So a lot of times, and this is a great example that I'm sure that we all have experienced, you go into a room and you just start talking to someone and you're like, something about that person that my spirit just doesn't take, right? And that's a common West Indian thing. Something about that woman, my spirit just don't take her. Yes. So when we think about that, it's the energy of that person that we're really relating to. We don't see it, but we feel it.
Right.
And a lot of times we negate what we feel, but what does that do to us? So an hour later, you leave that function or that room with that person, and you're like, all of a sudden, you're like, why do I feel so tired? And right. Or you start feeling agitated, or things just start, and you're like, I didn't do anything, but why do I feel so tired?
Right.
That exchange of that person's energy into your space is now affecting you without you even consciously understanding or recognizing it. So when we talk about energy, it's so important when we look at how do we protect that energy. A lot of times we're just going throughout our day and we don't even think that, the spaces that we're in, how that affects our mood, how that affects our health. And it really does. It's important to be mindful of the spaces that we're in, but also mindful of the people that are in our spaces. Sometimes we can't avoid it because, we all work with other people, but how, I'd love us to explore tonight, how do we protect ourselves in that? Because we really have to be mindful of protecting our space and holding boundaries.
I agree with you. And when you said like hoping to solve that and talk about that, I find for me, the one way that I have learned to take care of my energy is just to stay in silence. That there doesn't, and I can't say that this has always been the case for me, but I learned and I always say this, my more mature years, that silence has been a very self-loving thing. How do you take care of your energy? You don't give it to people. So when you're in a room, for me, if I walked into a room and somebody's energy didn't jive with mine, I'm exploratory in my more mature years, that I would more be from the perspective of, I don't need to engage in that. The most loving thing for me to do is not to engage in it. And also asking myself, if they're showing up in my sphere, they're part of my reality. So what is it in them that's triggering me that actually I have to look at it myself? And that actually further allows me to stay silent, because then I like to observe my own self.
I like that you mentioned the one of your practices being silence, because that's something I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to master that. But the power in silence is so golden, because it allows you to explore, but it also allows you to think. It allows you to not, give away energy that you don't need to. So when you just mentioned when you're in a space with people whose energy that you just doesn't jive with yours, you could easily get into a confrontation in situations that don't need to happen. And if you're not mindful of that and just taking a step back, being silent, not engaging with the energy, it actually saves you a lot more later, because you don't have to walk away from that situation feeling depleted. So it's interesting, because I always call, though, I always laugh with my girlfriends. We always call these people that we interact with that suck energy from us. We're like, yeah, the energy vampires. But it's like, and it's like, but who's giving the power away to them? Like, we're allowing it. Like, so when you mentioned before about boundaries, it's like some of it we allow, and some of it we have to say, okay, where do I take responsibility and pulling back my own power to not, give that energy to those people.
Right.
And we have them in our families. We have them, again, with people that we work with. But sometimes it's an uncomfortable conversation, or we think that it can turn into some kind of conflict if we say, I'm not going to spend that much time with you. But it doesn't have to be a negative thing. You get to establish what that interaction can look like, and you're allowed that.
Right.
You're allowed to be protected of your own energy.
Absolutely, because the flip side of it, and I know that I spent more of my years in this space than not. So for anybody watching, know that you're normal if you are spending time in the space where you are right, Tanya, where we walk into a room, we know that that person is not a healthy person for us. They're going to suck the life out of us, but we betray ourselves because we're looking to fit in, we're looking to be nice, we're looking for whatever the reason is. We betray ourselves and then walk away bitter, angry, resentful, judgmental. We're judging the situation. Like we're doing all this unhealthy stuff towards ourselves when really, you're right. We gave our power away. Nobody did it for us but us. We chose to go in out of our own insecurities and enable and actually basically give our power away on a silver platter is what I want to call it.
Like here's like serving up like dinner.
Right. Yes.
And even when we look at other aspects of power or ways that we give away our power, like think about a time when you're wanting to make a decision, you want something to happen, and it's not happening maybe as fast as you want it to happen or the way you want it to happen, and we start to do things or just force things to happen, and that's also a way of energy. And when you think about that, when we just kind of sit back and allow things, the power and the energy that it gives us in just allowing those situations to just fall into place or happen, the less energy that we're also giving of forcing, because we can also force energy or force things to happen, which also take energy in a negative way. So just allowing and sitting back and just saying, you know what, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'm just going to allow whatever to happen and see what happens.
I love the way you brought that up about the allowing, because it's a new concept that everybody's going through. Every X amount of years, there's a new thing, and it's the allowing. But I think we're waking up to a higher level of consciousness just across the board. So it's not necessarily new. I think we're building. It's a building block into a higher level of consciousness, and we are made up of energy. So I like the way you put it, where you're just allowing the energy to flow through. And yeah, one of the biggest energy drainers is forcing something. When we try to make something in our own power, and not to say that we're actually powerless when we're trying to make something happen. Like we have to start changing that view of how we're seeing it. Is we're more powerful when we're allowing, and we're less powerful when we're forcing it.
Yes. And there's a lot of power in just allowing things to unfold, and just being curious and looking at, okay, how is this going to happen, and just discover, just allowing things to unfold and discover things about ourselves too, because it also gives us a power when we get to see things and see how we react to different situations when we're sitting and waiting for something to unfold. It's magnificent, and you also get to learn so much about yourself. Like there's a situation where I was like waiting for something to happen, and it's like just fighting, like getting really agitated, like this should happen by now, like why is it not happening? And the more focus you put on that thing, the less it happens. So there's a saying that people always say, if you're too attached to something, you will never have it.
Yes.
So when you just let that, just put it out there and let the energies just sit there, things just unfold in ways and at times when we least expect it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's that
surrender. It's that idea of the surrender and what you said, the allowing, the surrendering, the opening up. It's funny. I say to people all the time, when you are going through things and you're forcing it, as you talk about, I call it the resistance. For me, I call it the resistance, where the more you're trying to make something happen, it is actually you not trusting that it already is. So because you're not trusting it, you're also sitting in the level of fear that it's not going to happen. And what you fear comes about. So as it doesn't happen, then it's because you're interfering with the energies of actually projecting your fear, not really what you want. And when you surrender it, you actually can see to the fact that this is what I want, but I'm not attached to it.
Absolutely. So not being unattached to the outcome of things. Yes. And sometimes I sit and I wonder, when we interfere or get involved in something when we're forcing it, are we changing the outcome of what that could be? So a lot of times I think about that, and it's a little subtle things that we do that also create different energy spaces for us and different outcomes when we're forcing.
So when we are allowing, what I know for a fact is that, out of my own personal experience, when we are allowing, we go into a sense of gratitude because you surrender to something greater than yourself. I can't handle it. So I always give the analogy of popcorn. When we're forcing a situation, God sitting down with some popcorn going, I'm watching this movie. Since you think you can do my job so well, let me go ahead and do it. And then all of a sudden, when you surrender to it and it works out, God puts down the popcorn and says, oh, you're giving me my job back. I just wanted you to know that you were doing a crappy job doing my job.
I just want to see you squirm down there a little bit and see, what would happen.
So we have people responding here, so forgive me here. But, so I want to shift it a little bit in terms of keeping your energy sacred to when we're allowing people to come into our life where we're having conversations or and they breed negativity into conversations, and you're sitting there, and a lot of times we don't know how to put a pin on it, especially in work environments where somebody starts talking about somebody else. Yeah. And you don't feel comfortable about it. Your energy starts to drain. It's not positive. It's not enlightening. It's just, at least for me, it's just not something that I thrive off of. When you're doing the spiritual work, you tend to be less and less engaged in that. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you?
I think those types of situations take a lot of courage in us to be ourselves, and not only be ourselves but also to say, you know what? I really am not interested in engaging in this kind of conversation, because then it's like, it's like you against them. So you all of a sudden are separating yourself from others. But I think that's the courage that we have to have, and drawing the boundaries and letting people know, because believe it or not, or in reality, people that come to complain to you know who they can come to complain to. So as soon as you entertain it, they will keep coming back.
Mhm.
Once you put a line or you draw a line in the sand, or you let people know that, you know what, I'm not really interested in that kind of conversation, you notice that those people will never come back to you.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. A great example. I used to have a friend that used to come and offload all her stuff to me and then go home all nice and, oh, I feel so great now that I got to offload all my stuff to you. And I would go to bed like with headaches, feeling, so I had to limit my interactions with her. And when, you know, she'd call and want to complain, I'd be, you know, I really don't have time to talk about this right now. And I really don't want to engage in this. If you have something great that you want to talk about, let's do that.
Mhm.
But it took a long time for me to build the courage to do that. But
That's not easy.
I would say, yeah, it's not an easy thing, because, you know, people feel like, well, I can't come to you and tell you how I'm feeling about something. And it's not that, because you're not wanting to also limit people from coming to you when they do have a real problem and they want to just, you know, sometimes people just want to get stuff off their chest and just want to be able to talk things through. But how long do they stay in that? And how often do they do that?
Right.
So it's looking at those types of boundaries when we're looking at when people come to us. But when you have the regulars that come all the time and it's a frequent habit, then those are the situations that you want to, you know, you want to be courageous and you want to draw boundaries around that. And sometimes it you know, at work it could be a little easier because you don't have, your relationships aren't that deep. When you have family situations, those can be much more challenging, because again, if you have like a sister or a brother, or, you know, a mother or father or cousin, those kinds of situations are, and depending on how close the relationships are, can be more challenging, because how do you tell your brother, well, I don't want to listen to you come and dump your stuff on me all the time? Because then it's like, oh, well, you don't love me as a sibling. When it's not that. It's just, it's building those boundaries so you can protect yourself, because again, it's coming back to the, when we used to be able to fly frequently, when you have to put the mask over your face first before you can help anybody else. So if you're not protecting yourself, and if you're not having the courage enough to protect yourself, then you're also betraying yourself from a love perspective, and you can't help anybody else. So it
Right.
starts with you protecting you first, and then everybody else after.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an interesting topic when you're talking about the family, close friends, dynamics. I definitely can relate to it. What I have found for me personally, especially when we're doing the spiritual work, you know, everybody talks about, we do the spiritual work, and then you start to find out things of why, how you were programmed or where you came from, and you realize that this awakening to your true, most more authentic self doesn't allow you to interact with the players in your life, meaning your close families around you. And for me, you are absolutely right that it takes so much courage. And I remember having to, you know, with my voice quivering, having to say to certain family members, like, you know, I just don't interact like that. Like, we had a fighting spirit about us. And when I realized
Yes.
that fighting spirit didn't need to exist anymore, there was another way for me to exist. I realized I could no longer interact with the close family members around me in that way. And it caused a lot of friction. But I had to stay true and said, look, whoa, wait a second. Is there a different way to handle this? Can we talk about something different? I remember confronting, is that the only thing you can do is complain about something or argue about something? It's so draining. Like, you come
Yeah.
here and I'm in a good mood, and you show up, and all of a sudden it's like I'm deflated in 5 seconds of you being here, because you've sucked the life out of me with all the complaining and the negativity and this. I'm like, and I remember saying, I can't do this.
Yeah. And you have to realize with individuals that are in that space, that it's serving them at the time.
Yeah.
So they don't care about, you know, that's their way of also gaining energy by being able to dump. So
That's a very good point.
And when we look at it, it's not, in all those situations, it's not malicious, or not, you know, saying, you know, I'm going to go and talk to this person and offload. It's they're not even thinking about that. They're just like, I want to feel better, so I'm going to go dump somewhere. And not realizing when they dump, it's like, okay, this is so heavy now. But I was saying to you earlier, it's funny, because when we think about energy, because we don't see it, we don't really pay attention to how we're exposing and protecting that. So when you actually put a visual to it. So I remember saying to somebody, would you allow somebody to walk through mud through your backyard and then walk inside your house and wipe their muddy boots onto your carpet? And they're like, no. And I said, well, when you let negative people come and dump on you, that's exactly what you're doing. You're letting them walk and wipe their muddy feet all over you and say, okay, thank you, my boots are clean. And now you have a muddy carpet that you have to now clean. So it's when we put an actual visual to it, we're like, oh, it connects a lot better.
So how do you, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. When somebody upsets you, how do you typically guard your energy? Because when typically as human beings, when we get upset, we tend to hang on to the, like when we get upset, when somebody upsets us, we tend to hang on to the energy, we stew over it, we go to bed. And that's a normal human reaction to somebody that's upset us. How do you, and that robs us of our energy. We're worried, we're overthinking, why didn't we say this? How do you guard your energy in that?
Well, for me, when I'm in this situation, now if you asked me this like 20 years ago, I would have a completely different reaction to or response to that, I would say. What I do now when I get upset or angry or in an angry situation with someone, I actually have to allow myself to calm down, and then I actually have to speak to the person. 20 years before, I would hang on to it and I would not say anything. I would walk around and I'd have all this pent up energy and anger and, let it pile up, let it pile up, let it pile up. And then it would take that one like little small incident that would happen and then I would explode and everything would come out. And I was like, Tanya, this is not, you don't need to do this. And it's not the amount of energy that you just spew out in that rage of anger because everything's coming out. It's not good for you. Mm-hmm. So, and I said, when I was walking around with it, when you're upset with somebody and you're walking around with it and you're holding it, they walk away and they're fine. They're not even thinking about you. They don't think about how you're feeling. They're good. And you're walking around holding that pent in. Mm-hmm. And what that also leads to is like internal things happening to you. So I was, starting to have headaches, like pain in my body. So when you're carrying all that stuff around and just thinking, oh, I'm just withholding my feelings or telling somebody that I'm upset about something because I want to save face and not ruin the relationship, but you're ruining you. You're
Absolutely.
ruining you.
Absolutely.
So to me, it comes back to how am I loving myself? How am I protecting myself? Because at the same time, even though I don't see it, those things start to manifest into different things into your body. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, is it worth it? No, it's not. So when I'm angry with somebody now, I allow myself to calm down so I can actually respond appropriately, but I have to respond. I no longer hold my feelings in. I don't hold in what I need to say because I know how that's going to manifest for me. So that's one thing that I've done in situations like that has really, really helped me. The other thing I kind of do as well, just to settle myself and protect my energy. So again, it's protecting my energy in the morning. I do not open cell phones or my computer first thing in the morning. I actually set my day. Either I do my devotion, I pray, and then I do meditation, and then I start entering into the world. Because again, if I haven't set that energy for myself to lay the foundation of how I want my day to go, everybody just comes in and just offloads their stuff, and then my day goes in, into a horrific.
When you don't set yourself up first thing in the morning through prayer, meditation, whatever it is, your ritual is, but when you're not, that oxygen mask doesn't go on for you first thing in the morning. Your day, it can go terrible. You can avoid so many pitfalls just by, I call it covering yourself, put your oxygen mask on, whatever you choose. But you are absolutely so right in that area.
Yeah, and it's just quieting and just not only quieting, but it's just laying the intentional foundation for the day.
And allowing
Like,
it to happen that way.
yeah, allowing things to unfold. You don't have to go, you don't have to like wake up to chaos. Like
Right.
you're allowing things to flow instead of be thrown into your morning or into your day.
Right.
And
So
that's not to say that things don't come up, because things do come up throughout the day, like emergencies or things. But I find that when you're able to set your day in the morning and those things come up, you've already created the energy that, okay, that came up, and you can handle it. You have the ability then to manage and handle those things much easier than if you were to wake up and you just started your day, you got into your email, you're rushing, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it just pulls a lot more from you, and you have nothing to give. By midday, you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Like this is like a day from hell, and it didn't happen.
I get it. I've been in your world in the earlier stages where you would stew and you would do this and that, and the other stages where you slow down and you speak and be intentional how you respond. Because you and I offline talk about energy, and we understand there are different variables. Like again, this topic can go into different branches. Let's touch upon the idea that when somebody's upsetting you, that's a part of your reality. You asked for that reality. And taking responsibility, part of guarding our energy is by understanding, or not even guarding, but taking care of, and let's rephrase that, taking care of our energy is understanding what kind of energy we're housing to invite that as a reality. And just before we answer that, we have Lolo Jennings. I call that protecting your eye gates and ear gates. So what goes in comes out intentional.
I love that.
Thank you. Yes, that is good. It's very nice. So we are in this moment, we've created this reality. So when somebody comes into our life and they upset us, there's something in us that has to heal to prevent that from coming in.
And I agree with that, because things seem to show up for us when we also need to elevate to the next version of ourselves as well. So, there's never any accidents of sometimes you do get those people that come in and it's like, I cannot with this person. But again, there's something in that person that, that you need to learn something from, that is going to also help excavate some of the pieces that you need to let go, so you can then graduate to the next level, the next version of you. So
Right.
sometimes, even though we get those people coming into our life, we call them at some point, and it's also a lesson for us. So not everything, when we look at, people coming into our spaces with negative energy and all that, there's also a piece of us that needs to be taught something. So when you think of, allowing negative people to come in and dump on you, what does that say about how you're treating yourself? Like, what are you allowing to happen to you? Why are you allowing it? And what are you going to do about it? So, there's also lessons for us if we just kind of sit and say, interesting. Like, how is this coming up? So to give an example of that, I was talking with a friend about, a job that she's looking at now, going to a new job, because the bosses that she's kind of dealing with right now, just little subtle pieces of things are just coming out, and she's getting so agitated about it. And I said, you've been complaining about this for a while, and you say just little subtle things that have been unfolding and happening, that it's almost like God in the universe telling you that there's something that you need to change, but you keep ignoring it. So it just keeps showing up in different ways with these same people. And, we talked through it, and she's like, yeah, like I need to, when she actually talked through it a little bit more, it actually gave her the courage to start thinking, or just asking herself questions about what she wants to do in her life with her career. And she realized, I don't really want to work for anybody anymore. And I think I want to move, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. So it took, a little simple situation that was so unrelated to get her to start exploring different aspects of herself which led to different decisions that she wanted to make about her life.
Yeah.
She wanted to start something for herself. She wanted to move out of the city and move like to a countryside where she could have more land and sell her house. And so it was interesting just having that little conversation and asking her some questions about that situation that was irritating her with these people that were just kept dumping their negative stuff onto her, how that evolved some of the things that she, have been pushing to the back of her mind and kind of ignoring, but they kept coming back to not reintroduce her, but to encourage her to look a little bit deeper at, these are things that you've been ignoring for a long time. It's time to look at them. Right. What are you going to do? How are you going to solve this? Because the same situation kept coming up with the same two people, and she just kept ignoring it and then just, saying, okay, I'm just going to relax and I'll deal with it later.
Mm-hmm. But we push things off a lot, right?
Yeah, and she couldn't push it off anymore. She got to the point where she was like, I'm done. So it actually forced her to do something.
Right. Because I'm a strong believer, in what I believe in now is that when you really understand energy, it is almost virtually impossible for what's existing in your life to exist in your life if you're not housing that energy in your body as you talk about it, moving, healing so that you can move on, or sending you a message of some sort. I know for me personally, one of the things that, I've had to learn to do was to be able to sit in the yuckiness of it all and in the eye of the storm, and just sit in that moment and say, breathe and say, okay, Tanya, what is it in you that is not loving yourself through this moment? What is it? Because as you said earlier on, it comes down to that place of love. What in me in this moment isn't allowing me to love myself? Why am I treating myself in an unhealthy way through the situation? And how can I take care of me? We have somebody writing in that's so good. We really do a disservice when we allow those things to happen. Energy is currency. It costs someone in the exchange of it more often not it costs us. Absolutely. So what in me do I have to do? More recently, in the last year or so, it's interesting that I love meditation, and the more I sit in meditation and I sit there asking myself, what in me am I not loving in me through the situation? I started to come up with this feeling to say thank you. So to add this huge gratitude, love gratitude in my heart. So if somebody upset me, all of a sudden I loved them. I said, thank you. Thank you for, and I would state what I wanted to feel through them. Thank you for us being in harmony. Thank you for, even if they were or weren't, it just changed my internal atmosphere. Mm-hmm. That I was no longer spewing and playing tennis. I call it a tennis match. You get into an argument with somebody, or somebody upsets you, and then you get upset with them back, whether they know you're upset with them or not. It's a cosmic tennis match.
Yes.
And we don't understand. So now we house this energy with the tennis match with this person, but then we don't realize that because we're housing that energy, we're inviting another experience. And all of a sudden, for me to learn how to diffuse that was to ask myself what in me wasn't, responding in a healthy way, number one. And number two is really appreciating that person in a way of how I wanted to interact and exist with them. And all of a sudden it changes. And then forgiving myself, saying, Tanya, I'm sorry that I put you through this. Sorry that you didn't know how to love yourself. I forgive you. Now let's move on.
I really love that, because it all starts with us. It starts with us. And you mentioned something about the tennis match that kind of triggered something in my thinking.
You said tennis match and somebody's writing in tennis match.
Because the other thing, when you talked about the tennis match, when we get into a situation and then we play that tennis back and forth and it creates another situation, I also equate that to creating open loops. So open is also another way of siphoning energy from ourselves, when we leave something open and unsaid or undealt with, that we are also taking energy from us. And when we think about the situations that we're in, that we need to sit down and kind of turn the mirror inward and look at, okay, so why are you allowing this? Like, by avoiding that work that we have to do, we're creating even bigger open loops that create other open loops and other open loops.
I want the audience to hear what you just said again. When we avoid doing the work, what happens? We create
open loops
and bigger open loops.
Yeah.
We invite it, and then we wonder why, and we play the victim. And I've been there. So guys, believe me when I say that I'm speaking to myself too. Okay.
We've all been, trust me, we've all been there.
It is about understanding. Again, it's all about that self-love and self-gratitude that is going to open us up and invite more self-love and self-gratitude. When we're appreciating ourselves and we're loving ourselves, and we're learning how to set ourselves up in an environment where we can show up being that love and gratitude of who we are.
Yes.
We're only going to invite that into our life. And we really need to understand that on such a deep level. You are absolutely right that it does begin with us. When we are loving ourselves and appreciating, we do not appreciate ourselves.
We don't.
Let me say this to the audience very carefully. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge. Society has taught us to focus on changing the unhealthy things. When we acknowledge who we are, the truth, the beautiful, the powerful, the strong, the loving, the brilliant person we are, we can affect change within ourselves. Acknowledge all those wonderful things and then take it to a place of love and gratitude and watch what happens in your life.
Yeah. And even acknowledging, because I know I can speak for myself, even acknowledging the things that you don't like about yourself. When I say that you don't like, the things that you don't want to admit. Mm-hmm. So when we do that work, we're like, oh, I really didn't want to see that about myself. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that, because that also gives us a power. We're all designed and made in different ways. And when we learn to love the great things about us, the things that we don't like so much about ourselves, we realize how unique we are, and we start to appreciate just how unique we are. Mm-hmm. And once you start loving yourself from that perspective, you start drawing that love and appreciation from others. So you start creating the things that you actually want versus mm-hmm. the things that you don't want.
Absolutely.
So it starts with that, taking it all in. Like you love the things that you love about yourself and the things that you don't love so much about yourself. Mm-hmm. You're one person, love it all.
Yes.
Like there's nothing wrong with you. Love it all.
Every bit of it. It's like, well, it creates the balance, right? The yin and the yang, like it creates that opposite, the left and the right, like it creates the balance. So appreciating that's what keeps you balanced is the things that you may not appreciate, or whether you appreciate that are flawed, if that's what you want to call it. It's just your balance. And if we don't even attach those type words to it, but it's those things that keep us balanced. The things Absolutely. That we're not as strong with and the things that we're strong with, but we appreciate them all because that's what makes us who we are. I want to put a little different spin to it. And I want to have a very throw you off guard a little bit, but a discussion about, I recently had a situation where, I was in a room and I knew that the individuals that I was going to be in the room with didn't have healthy thoughts about me as an individual. And I was going with a girlfriend somewhere, and I walked into the room and I kept silent the entire time. So we laughed and my girlfriend looked at me and she said, but you betrayed yourself. You let them get the better of you. You stayed silent. You weren't your vibrant self and you betrayed yourself. And I said, no, I took care of myself in that moment. I loved myself. I don't owe them an explanation. I know what their thoughts are towards me, and I love myself so much that I'm not going to just share myself with people that are not in a place to celebrate and appreciate me as an individual. My silence was actually my way of loving me, my way of treating me in a great way, not giving them something to anchor onto within my soul, within my energetic sphere. So I'm encouraging, I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but your thoughts on that.
It really does, because when you think about it, who wants the person that wants, oh, you should have said something, you should have spoke. Is that, is that you coming from spirit, or is that your ego?
Right.
Because there's a time to speak and there's a time not to speak. And sometimes in those times when you're not to speak, it's actually more powerful than speaking, because, oh, my ego's telling me I need to say something. Do you really need to say something?
Well, I thought it was such growth for me to understand it from a different perspective.
Yes.
That was my way of loving me in that moment. It was like, no, actually, and I don't, it's divine how I came up with it, because I didn't even have to think about it. It was just, hey, listen, I love myself enough that I don't really, I don't need to open that little loophole as you go, the hole for you to anchor into anything. So let me just sit and.
Absolutely. There's nothing that, if you don't engage in it, there's nothing to anchor to, as well as there's nothing to deal with.
And then you get to walk away and celebrate yourself and appreciate yourself and be happy and woohoo. And
it's almost, when I think about it, it's like, yeah, I'm just bubbling myself to protect myself from, all those things out there that I don't need to deal with.
Right. So. It's truly amazing how we don't realize as human beings how much, as you call it, holes we have within our aura, that are leaking energy and allowing energy to come in, that unwanted energy to come into our life.
Yeah, it's just, and it goes back to, those little subtleties, just little subtleties that we don't pick up, or that we allow something to happen once or twice, and then we're like, why am I feeling that way? What is that? So it's being more mindful, and that's why I loved when you opened with the silence piece, because I think silence is so golden, especially in a day and age where everybody feels like they need to say something, whether it's on social media or they need to. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. Sometimes you just need to sit back and allow yourself to process in silence. And then I find that when you're able to do that, the vision that you can have, the sight that you can have from doing that one little activity can give you so much energy and power to, navigate things in a different way with least effort. Mm-hmm. So that's where you don't have that force piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That resonates with me, where it's allowing again. It's the whole allowing piece. I like to sit in silence and observe everything around me, and then intentionally in that space, set the intention of how I'm going to project my energy, how I'm going to share it, how I'm going to put my energy out, and ask myself in the moment of silence, if I'm in a group setting, that is, what type of energy do I want to engage with coming into me? So it gives me the chance to have a choice, and I want to say be in control, but more be intentional with how I'm setting myself up for self-love.
Yeah.
We are loving ourselves in this moment that you and I are talking. We are loving ourselves through each other. So it is a reflection of the love I have for myself. It is a reflection of the love you have for yourself. So how I take care of my energy by understanding how I'm going to love myself through the other individual. And I'm sure, I hope the audience is picking up on how that works, because it does.
And I love the word intentional that you use as well, because how often are we intentional about things these days? And what we just go, we just do things, and we're not. So I think that's one thing for me. I would say, even through the last year and a bit, is being intentional where I want to spend my time, being intentional about who I want to spend my time with. Because again, going back to the point you just made, it's, you know, how am I going to love myself and protect myself through my interactions with people? If I know that I'm going to go into a negative situation, being intentional about how I'm going to enter into that space and how I'm going to prepare myself to, you know, navigate through the time that I'm there so I don't come out feeling deflated. So it's you know, it's really thinking, it's really putting yourself first, and not in a negative way, because people are like, whoa, self first. It's about self-love as
Oxygen
well.
mask. Yes, like it's your
It's about
oxygen mask.
self-love. Yeah, and
How are you going to give somebody else love if you don't have love within you? If you're not allowing the most unselfish thing that Tanya can do for herself is to learn how to receive. And if you are not allowing yourself to receive love and be in a place of love, how are you going to give it to somebody else?
Yeah, and you also have to look at it, you know, you're also teaching people how you want to be loved by loving yourself. So there's a saying that my mother used to always say, you teach people how to treat you. Like I'm sure we've all heard that. So when we interact and love ourselves and protect ourselves in that way, we're also energetically putting out there, this is how I want to be treated.
Yes.
This is my expectations of my boundaries and how I want you to show up in my space.
And
so
that's a reflection of know thyself. When you do
yes,
the work to know thyself, that's how it is projected.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you acknowledge the things you can't? Like, this is know thyself.
Yeah.
This
And
is how to teach people how to treat me. This is how to teach people how to love me. How I know myself.
Yeah. And it's funny because just that one aspect is so hard for all of us to get to, because work on myself. First of all, what is that? And I don't want to have to do all this work. And sometimes it's just better for me to just sit and, like, you know, watch a movie or to busy myself with something else, because then I don't have to think about doing that thing, working on myself. But what are
you are the most interesting person you'll ever meet. My daughter just said that to me the other day. She goes, I'm interesting and I don't even know myself. And I was like, girl, you're only 17.
I love that.
Like, you know, I'm like, my 17-year-old child is now talking about finding herself interesting. And gosh, I was so grateful. I could be in tears right now on the show, just hearing those words from her. Tanya, you are the most interesting person you will ever meet. Why wouldn't you want to spend time knowing yourself more deeply?
Yeah, and I think it's like, oh, you get to uncover something. And I think part of the work, when people say, oh, I got to work on myself, there are aspects to working on yourself that aren't so great sometimes,
right,
but that just yeah. And it's like, there's a friend of mine, we always say, you know, it's, you know, working on yourself is not like singing Kumbaya and wearing working socks. Like, it's like, sometimes it's hard, and it doesn't have to be hard. It's how gentle you want to be through navigating those situations that are, you know, things that you don't want to deal with. But once you come out on the other side of those, the things that you learn about yourself, it's like you're learning yourself again for the first time. And when you're doing that, I think there's such power and confidence in that, in being able to know yourself and to learn yourself, that no one else can tell you about you except for you. There's no one on this earth that can tell you about you except for you. Not even the people who birthed you.
This is why I got into the line of work I did, because it was based on a 6-year-old. When I was 6 years old, my father said to me, you know, everybody's born into different religions, different faith. Mine was Christianity. My father said, seek ye the kingdom of God and all will be added to you. And what that meant to me, and he said to me, Tanya, God is energy. Know thyself, study thyself, unlock the window to your soul. And there's nothing that anybody has over you once you know thyself. And it has been my onward journey. We have somebody writing in, Lolo, yes, intentional was the word I coined for 2021, because in the past, I was too haphazard with my thoughts and actions. This is such an amazing conversation, ladies. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending time with us here this evening. And at the end of the day, I really, we have 10 minutes left, and I really genuinely believe that the way we take care of our energy is to know thyself. When we know thyself, we know how to love ourselves. When we love ourselves, we know how to treat ourselves. When we know how to treat ourselves, we teach people how to treat us. When we know thyself, we allow ourselves to be in a position to receive, because all of a sudden we know what nourishes us, what feeds us, how we like to be watered. All those little, key nuggets go into your energy. Silence. I love the silence. I love gratitude, appreciating appreciating it all, because everything is getting you to that place of being in a higher place of energy for yourself. It's just beautiful. Like I get excited.
It is. I mean, when you think about your experiences as well, like when you go through those levels and the experiences that you start to have, it's like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because everything changes. Because whether we want to believe it or not, we are calling everything to us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even calling, we're magnetizing everything to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
that goes back to the energy piece. So when we do the work, we know thyself, and we're able to understand what we want and put those boundaries in place, and we start to call, all of a sudden the things that we want just start to show up. Because when you know thyself, you also change what you do.
Absolutely.
Well, then brings into other things. Yeah, it's just amazing to see how everything just lines up when you just do just yourself, just starting with yourself.
Absolutely. And that deep connection, like when you know thyself and you make that deep connection with it, like, and I'm sure you felt this before, where all of a sudden you like discovered this thing about yourself and you're like, actually, that's not what I like. This is what I like. And you really embrace it and can see to it. And as you say, it shows up. Woo, girl. And you know that your life will never be the same again.
Yeah. and you just it's so interesting, because even things as making decisions, being able to navigate a problem, those things all start to change, because again, you become more confident in, okay, no, I don't want that, I want this, and being able to command it. So,
and you also, in addition to community, can I add to that by saying you attract, or you magnetize people that will enhance and complement that energy, that loving energy, that vibrant energy, that fun energy, that adventurous spirit, like just the funness of it all.
Yeah.
Because you're now understanding yourself in a way that you can now enjoy it. And as you enjoy it and have fun with it, you start to invite people into your life that you no longer have to guard and protect your energy. What you do is you share your energy. You get to take that energy and collaborate with the person in front of you or beside you or in your life. You get to collaborate and share and exchange in that powerful, loving, grateful energy. Obviously
one big great ball of like and you're just like, oh, I love being around this person. It's just like, I love being around that.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love enjoying this conversation with them, and this, like, it's just so beautiful. But again, it comes down to know thyself. When you start to understand what feeds you, you're an environment, you don't pick up on that vibe. Well, what in me is magnetizing it? What's causing me to bring that into my life? Why? And I think silence in those moments are the key factors. Why are we silent? We're silent because that's our way of loving ourselves in the moment as we're sorting through the know thyself process. It's just shared energy. It becomes reciprocal. How liberating. It absolutely is liberating.
Oh, absolutely. It's like,
I appreciate
breaking those shackles.
That what? Sorry?
I said you're breaking those shackles when you're just allowing yourself to be free. It's like, it's such a freeing, but it's also so empowering at the same time.
Right. And I like the fact that all you guys out there hearing this is the last piece of the conversation that we're finishing off with, because the work, you are your greatest asset. I have it on, on my website. It was like one day I was sitting and I was just like, guys, we are our greatest assets. We are the most interesting and most powerful person we'll ever meet. And I want everybody there to get to know themselves, because that's where I think you really tap into, I feel that you tap into your real, true power. And once you tap into that, there really is nothing to protect and keep sacred, because you're operating in your truest, most authentic self. So what
Yeah.
you in turn get to do when you live from that authenticity and that truth, you get to share it and no longer protect it. And I think that that's what I noticed and observed within my own transformation was I'm no longer protecting my energy.
And there's no need to at that point. There's no need to. You're attracting all the things that you want and that you need. So you don't. There's no need to shield that anymore.
No. And if somebody does, because we do have a loop, like little holes, if it does show up, because the work has been created and done where I can identify it quicker, and I'm about using your voice and just being direct, you just call it out. Like, no, we don't have those type of conversations, or no, we don't treat ourselves. And I love watching people's expressions.
Because it's like, oh, they said that. And a lot of times people will not like it, but it's also their own stuff that they have to deal with. It's work that they have to do. So again, it's that courage and that confidence. You're speaking your truth on what needs to happen and work for you. Mm-hmm. Some people may not like it, but that's also because you're also reflecting, oh, there's stuff that I have to do as well, to get myself to where I need to be. So I can be there as well and not feel those things. So sometimes it's always sometimes you're also being a mirror for other people to help them. So you can show into this.
Very true.
There's something that you need to do. So I'm just showing up as your mirror to help you along your journey. So
I never thought of that. That's a good one. We're always learning. That's my takeaway. You're showing up as somebody else's mirror. Let's remind ourselves that you may be showing up as somebody else's mirror.
Yeah.
I got to write that one down when we come off.
This is such a great conversation. I could talk forever about this.
I know. We got 2 minutes. Give me one last tip of how somebody can take care of their energy off the top of your head for somebody that's just beginning.
For both women, and I would say for men as well, learn to say no to some things, and have no regrets, not even regrets, but no apologies. No apologies, unapologetic. Stand up for yourself, protect yourself. Don't say yes to things that you rather not say yes to. Because those are all things that you're creating energy that you may, or in spaces that you may not want, but it's okay to love yourself first, to put yourself first, and to understand your own needs and be able to set boundaries around those things.
Yes.
It's okay.
Well said. Well said. Thank you for being here this evening. I want to remind our guest that you are an NLP coach and a personal development expert and an all-around problem solver. You can find Tanya on LinkedIn on Tanya N. Smith. You can also find her on Facebook at Tanya Smith International with the number 1, and also on Instagram at TSI Consulting Group. So please follow her, like, and subscribe her. And if you want to work with her as an NLP coach and as a personal development expert, she would be happy to work with you. Also, I'm Tanya Ricketts, your host on Tanya Talks. I am also part of the Tanya Experience at thetanyaexperience.com, and I'm ready to work with you one-on-one as well to help you elevate your life to the next level. Tanya, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. I always have fun and love our conversations.
Yes, we get. I'm a conversationalist. I love it. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. It was a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again. Join us tomorrow where we will be talking about simplicity. So with our guest tomorrow. All right. Good night, everybody, and have a good
night, everyone.
Bye-bye.